Hi, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Boon of Wireless podcast, now part of Wirelo. Yes, Wirelo, revolutionizing the way businesses in the wireless industry connect, collaborate, and thrive. As a premier B2B marketplace, Wirelo's platform is designed to cater specifically to the needs of the wireless store vendors in America. Check them out at wirelo.com. I am your host, Jon Horovitz, coming to you as always high above the streets of northern New Jersey at ANJ Media. It would not be a Boon of Wireless podcast without Andrew behind the glass. There he is. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, John.
Yeah, it's good to see that you're doing well. So the final is set for the World Cup. I'm sure that you're going to be very pleased. The final right here in East Rutherford, New Jersey, this Saturday. Traffic should be at a premium. And you're going to the game, we're going to watch from home.
It's almost over, and I'll watch from home.
There you go. What else is happening in your world?
John?
Yes?
You're looking very festive today.
Well, it's 90 degrees in July. I thought I would bring a little levity to the studio today.
You're blending in.
I blended in with what?
The studio.
Oh, look at that. Okay. Well, I hope we don't cause any issues for our viewers out there. Those of you who are listening, you're going to have to start watching it on video. All right, let's get started. My guest today is a visionary in the wireless space who blends both his experience in the financial world as well as wireless. Leonid Levit was the first advisor to Wing Tel Alpha when the company was founded in 2017. Leo spent over a decade working across various financial service firms in the quantitative hedge fund, private equity, and real estate capital market verticals. He ultimately began investing on his own, acting as a general partner and raising limited partner capital from the relationships he built over the course of his career. Leo returned to Wing Tel to lead a minor recapitalization of the company, as well as become its chief operating officer in February of 2022. Leo became the CEO of Wing Tel Alpha in April 2013 and has since pivoted to one of the largest resellers of fixed wireless services in the United States. Leo continues venture investing and actively operating the day-to-day operations of Wing Tel. Please join me in welcoming to the broadcast Leo Levit. There he is, my good friend Leo. How are you, sir?
Good to see you, John. Good to be here.
Good to see you. I'm high above the streets of northern New Jersey. You are high above the streets in Manhattan, right across from the Bull on Wall Street, correct?
Yes, though right now I think we're more downtown. We're
More okay.
right next
All
to the
right.
World Trade Center, so in the area.
Great. In the area. Okay. So I have a lot to talk to you about today. And let's just start off with what you said in an interview about 2.5 years ago. You stated that Wing Alpha's goal was to eliminate two major pain points for mobile users. One, expensive plans, and two, poor customer service. What was the moment of frustration that caused you to look at these two areas and focus on them?
The international aspect. Anytime you leave the country, it's a nightmare. Still, even to this day, I would say. So, a day pass, as a general rule of thumb, is, I mean, very expensive, right? $10 a day to use your cell phone service, essentially abroad, seamlessly. If you're away for a week, $70 for the average consumer. That's quite high. There's also not a fantastic easily accessible offering for international calling. I mean, carriers will generally push you to mobile apps such as WhatsApp, Viber, Telegram, etc. But there's no seamless kind of use your phone option, I would say. And obviously, that's innovated over the years. You have network IP, you have other offerings, but if you just walk into an AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile store, I mean, the only option you get is essentially day pass, right? That's your kind of vanilla offering, and $10 a day, your vacation is quite expensive.
Yep, I paid $10 a day last time I was in Europe in the fall, and actually was trying out a prepaid brand, and I had to pay in advance. They had to know exactly the dates I was going to be in that country or other countries and how long. So it was crazy. I got this bill prior to even going, unlike on postpaid where it's done in arrears. So to accomplish this goal of fixing your pain points. You offered a selection of affordable plans and the assurance that you'll always get a live person when calling in. You were quoted as "no robots here." How is that working out?
Still no robots. Working on robots, obviously, just like everybody else. I think I think the bottom line is we're almost a decade old at this point, right? So we've been around for 9 years, and so at some point we had 400 offshore agents working for us. So we've scaled that down substantially with a mix of more intelligent routing, IVR building. I mean, things that people are kind of overall doing, but ultimately, it's about integrations, and it's about building smoother and smoother processes between the actual end carrier, ourselves, and the customer, with a mix of better integrations and more intelligent paths for customers to do self-service, and just overall technology advancing. I think that you could still deliver that personal touch without sacrificing quality.
But as we all know, AI is evolving very fast. So where do you see AI helping, not replacing, your human first service model?
So I think the number one thing that people get frustrated with carriers is actually trying to leave, right? So if you call a carrier uh, and try to leave, you're going to get into a retention vortex, right? So we get into this retention vortex. So we built something that we're only using internally for ourselves, but maybe we'll start selling it B2B into dealers. We call it Port Assistant. So nobody knows where to find their port pin, including my own mother. With so what we do is we will call in to the carrier alongside you with our AI assistant, and we will essentially guide you with your consent, obviously, to navigate all of the retention offers to get you the port pin to actually get you to leave. As the customer service agent on the other side, whether it's T-Mobile, AT&T, or Verizon, kind of constantly attack you with offers. We will also chat you on the side and tell you, the different reasons why we could, either be better or are better. So that's one of the reasons. That's one of the things that I think AI could be helpful with, because the carrier offers are never transparent, right? So by the time you get through the T's and C's and the taxes and the fees, nobody really knows what you're paying.
Let's just step back a minute for people that don't know, and I'd be shocked if anybody does not know who Wing Tel Alpha is. Tell us about Wing Tel. I mean, you're not just an MVNO. There's other things you do. So, I mean, OSS, BSS, aggregator. Take us through what, if you had to meet someone at a cocktail party, what do you do now, Leo? Tell us about Wing Tel Alpha.
We started out as an MVNO, right? So we were the last MVNO with Sprint. So we had the last wholesale deal with Sprint. Eventually, Sprint and T-Mobile merged, and we kind of had our business move to one of the T-Mobile aggregators. But ultimately, we're in exclusively an MVNO for, I would say, 6 years. That's all we did. We worked with wholesalers. We worked with carriers directly. We were the only MVNO under TracFone when TracFone got bought by Verizon. We were actually in a pilot program. So Verizon didn't realize they bought a piece of our user base. We didn't even get an invoice for 2 months, which was great. Eventually, somebody asked us. So eventually, somebody from Verizon called me and asked me, "Hey, by the way, who are you guys?" Which was interesting. That was kind of one element that we went through. We were also the one of the largest customers under Palladium, which was publicly traded, eventually kind of went bankrupt, got delisted. So we've bounced from wholesale partner to wholesale partner to wholesale partner. So we've seen the different kind of pros and cons, mostly cons, of this of being in those situations. And so when I came back as a COO and CEO, I said, uh, there's margin compression in the MVNO space. People are using more and more data, therefore you can only, you can't arbitrage the plans anymore. On top of that, there's a price war, and on top of that, hardware is getting more and more expensive. So to me, MVNO long term was a losing proposition unless you could figure out some sort of niches or how to charge a premium, et cetera. So I decided to add on additional products, and so home internet to me was very attractive. And with the rise of 5G, I decided to focus all of our attention on business internet, eventually some home internet, and then through that I realized that the other smaller dealers and resellers were not taking advantage of the same opportunity. So we started enabling using some of our contracts, not all, but some of our contracts, we started enabling kind of the dealers and the smaller stores to refer us business. And so we just, we would bill them, we would offer perpetual spiffs, we would take the hardware financing risk on ourselves to the customers, to the business owners. And that created a very lucrative opportunity because instead of trying to pay spiffs and kind of make dealers and resellers go away, we would pay them a perpetual residual. And in that kind of situation, they're not incentivized to flip customers back and forth for commissions. Our interests are aligned long term, and so we found a lot of success with that. And so one of the main secrets of kind of my success is I brought the Wall Street financing element to 5G business and home internet at a time when the routers were very expensive, right? So the average router is $400, and so we created a structure that's affordable for everyone.
You mentioned arbitrage a few minutes ago, and in the introduction, I mentioned your vast experience in the financial world. What drew you to the wireless space?
It's a very, very large market. So if you think about wireless, I mean, if you think about telecom in the United States, it's $1 trillion market. So whenever I think about you go in front of a VC or a PE and you draw these bubbles and here's $1 million, but how big's your market size? And so it's very rare that you could say your market size is 1 trillion just in one country, right? So if you look at AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, you're at 650 billion plus SpaceX, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you get to probably 1.5 trillion very quickly just in the US. So to me, I just like the big bubbles. And then I saw this transition from 4G to 5G. And I thought to myself, in $1 trillion market, such a massive infrastructure shift will create inefficiencies. And if I can just make 0.5% or 1% and monetize that inefficiency, I'll be pretty well off. And so that's what's been going on.
And it worked, right?
It worked. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Congratulations. What were some of your earliest experiences, though, in the wireless field that surprised you, and how did you respond?
Wireless providers have never made hardware. Really, they haven't made wireless hardware, right? You have Apple, you have Samsung, but the carriers don't really make hardware, right? They make routers that go in your closet that connect to a Ethernet cable, right, or a regular cable. And so as they entered wireless, which is technically their expert domain with 5G, I saw a lot of different hardware issues, we'll say, that I didn't expect, right? And so I actually went very, very deep into understanding chip manufacturing and module manufacturing and firmware and antennas and waves and interference on a very deep level to the point where I dealt with, I mean, basically all the chip. I mean, there's 3 major chip makers, 4 major module makers, and I worked on designing routers that would perform well. Let's say. What's interesting to me is before this, you assume 100, $200 billion companies, they would have very, very they would be very experienced in their um, manufacturing decisions and sort of their supply chain management. So they managed to get pretty aggressively priced 5G hardware onto the market. But I wouldn't say, I think that there was a very steep learning curve for them as they went through manufacturing. And it's visible in the amount of devices that are available in 5G routers in the refurb market, right? So if you look at the refurb market for 5G routers in America, I mean, it's, today it's the best 5G router. Next year it's, the garbage one, and there's a new best one. And it keeps going. But each iteration is a $250 million iteration. So, you know, yesterday you sold something that's the best thing for $400. Tomorrow, it's basically worth, you could buy it for 50 on the refurb market. And so I think that was something that I kind of saw coming because whenever somebody goes into a market without truly having core competence in it, you get sort of something like this. And so this is what I assumed would happen. So all I had to do was wait out the first year to year and a half of the iteration cycle to then see to then see those devices go to the refurb market and then buy them up. And
Right.
there's ways to fix, if you get the device cheap enough, there's ways to add antennas, et cetera, to make it actually perform how you want it to, right? So that was kind of what I took advantage of. And of course, besides 5G and MVNO, we also do, as you said, other things: OSS, BSS, platform, etc.
So you're known also as an MVNE. That's an enabler that handles billing, handles a lot of connectivity. It's probably the most important thing that a MVNO needs to enable everything to work, talk to each other, et cetera. And an aggregator as well. We've talked about it many times on the program that some MVNOs just aren't big enough or don't want to have a direct relationship with their carrier, one of the big three that you mentioned before. And you have B2B sales. Who comes to you? What type of wannabe MVNOs come to you that would need your services for the billing, the OSS, BSS, and all that other stuff that that would prevent them from going to a big carrier?
Yeah, so on one side, I mean, we're the best people to come to if you're a small guy, because we were a small guy and we've built a business over, close to a decade at this point. And what's interesting about us is we'll always look at it from the customer perspective. So I speak to guys that have 1,000 lines. I speak to guys that have 10,000 lines. Obviously, I prefer the 10,000 line guy, but my philosophy is we've built our platform in a way where we can onboard virtually anybody and give them access to a full API integration within 5 minutes. So to me, it doesn't really, I'll take them all, because if I'm already on the phone call, I might as well monetize it. But high level, who comes to us, the people that don't want to make obviously huge commitment to the carriers, they don't want to sign a 10, 20, $30 million deal over 5 years. That's number one. Number two, somebody who wants access to multiple products. So such as business internet and MVNO, home internet and MVNO, IoT and business internet, et cetera. So they also want access to multiple providers in one place. They don't want to put security deposits. So as long as you're willing to operate on a prepaid basis with us, we don't need security deposit from you. Obviously, if you want a postpaid, we either need security or some sort of, collateral, depending on the size you want to start off with. But we're very flexible on what the platform fee is or what the implementation fee or startup fee is, because we really want to get you off the ground and we want you to be successful. So to me, I'm willing to defer many things to get you launched, and let's see if it works for both of us. The cost for me is very de minimis, right? I mean, to launch you. So because we have our own, licenses, we already pay the 35K a month carry to be an MVNO, to be licensed for all the tax compliance. So for me to do billing on behalf of you, it's not any extra cost. So that's why I'm willing to kind of work with people to get them launched very quickly, give them access to a lot of products, and let's see if they can make something.
So fixed wireless, we're seeing fixed wireless explode right now. Do you believe, in your opinion, that dealers are embracing it? I know they should embrace it, but are they embracing it? And what is Wing doing to help grow this segment in the dealer channel?
Dealers are definitely not embracing it.
Why?
Hardware. I think there's a lot of hardware complexity and kind of confusion, and it goes back to, I mean, partially the carriers created it, right? So dealers don't need to know much about cell phones because everybody has a Samsung or an iPhone, and you pop a SIM card in, off you go. Starlink is pretty self-explanatory. So is Viasat, HughesNet. Fiber's fiber. When it comes to wireless routers, then you get into this question: well, what router do I choose? And then you have a portfolio of 300 routers. You have everything from a Cradle Point PepLink for $5,000. You have an in-hand or a global telecom for a couple $100, or a Catalyst, right? And then you have the carrier routers, and so then most dealers get confused. If they're not buying at some sort of volume, then they're left with this MSRP price of 300 ish, maybe 250. But with the price of memory going up and the tariffs, they're at $300 to $400. And so it's very hard for a dealer to take on a $300 to $400 cost, because the question is, how are they going to get that money back? By making 20-30 bucks a month? Like, they have to have the customer for a long time. See, the value of working with us is, we know all the troubleshooting, we have all the API integrations. Obviously, we'll work on the billing directly with the customers. you don't need to do the troubleshooting. You don't need to pick the router. We'll pick the router. You don't need to figure out the on-net coverage. We have all the APIs for the coverage. You don't need to figure out how to finance the hardware and how to help sell your customer. We'll do the financing. We have all sorts of different programs for that. And we can also finance directly to the customer. So it doesn't have to be on the dealer's paper, right? So we don't have to lever them up. We don't have to hit their credit score, their business credit. There's all sorts of different options we have where we've made it a lot more flexible to kind of enable them. But it's really a hardware issue. And the carriers have done a pretty bad job of making the hardware accessible to their resellers, I would say.
Talking to a couple startups that I think are going to have challenges competing with the Charters and the Xfinities of the world that are making inroads into the dealer channel. How does a startup in the fixed wireless break into our little community if they can?
I think you need to figure out the hardware financing first. I think you need to figure out how to get access to all of the fixed wireless offerings, whether it's through us or, to be honest, I'm not really sure who else you would go to. So what's interesting is you have all these aggregators, but the aggregators were not granted resale permission for fixed wireless. See, so you have these 50, $100 million commitments, but you don't have access to this product, right? And there's reasons for that, right? And so uh, when we go out and market to these kind of different dealers and we say, listen, you could still resell and own the customer on your MVNO or your fiber, and we will do the billing on the FWA. I'm happy to sign whatever non-competes it is. Ultimately, we have the experience to make sure that the customer doesn't churn, because a lot of people onboard FWA customers and then they see churn, right? They did bad coverage analysis. They don't know the antennas. They don't know how to tell them where to place it, et cetera, et cetera. So there's fixed wireless has a lot of complexity that doesn't necessarily come with an iPhone or an Android, right? An iPhone at the end of the day is a $1,500 computer in your pocket. And when you pop in a SIM card, it's probably going to work even up the mountain. That's not really the case with the FWA router. Yes, it's a $400 router. There's a lot more complexity, right? And
but it's something that's not going to go away. And dealers to stay competitive. You talk about the margins that they're looking at now being squeezed in all different product lines. I think that, and I think you agree that the FWA is fixed wireless is something that needs to be embraced by the dealers. And I think people like you and other people in your space need to continue to do what you're doing. And that's to educate them, show them how they can keep a customer longer by adding those and other services.
I think we have a dealer network at this point of 327 dealers, and they vary again from one line to 10,000 plus lines, right? And so we work with some relatively large people in the space. And what I would say is I tell my sales guys to spend a lot of time educating our dealers on how to make money, because there's this thing in telecom where people used to know how to make money doing satellite installations and then playing the different spiff games in retail prepaid. Okay, but ultimately, what I've realized in FWA land, at least today, if you take the FWA pricing and the FWA incentives and you combine it with regular aggregator, kind of wholesale pricing for MVNO, you can actually beat the carrier offer. So I'll give you a perfect example. One of my sales guys came to me and he said, I'm speaking to a WISP. WISP wants to do FWA. However, they refuse to do FWA unless we price it like the carrier. He said, well, which carrier? Right. And they said to me, oh, well, there's a Verizon, business internet for $50. I said, okay, no problem. I said, without even looking at it, I said, tell him I will match Verizon business internet at $50. However, I want him to sell the entire offer. He's like, what do you mean? I said, go click on the ad, tell him to click on the ad and go through the whole funnel. And click on the ad. And then once you click on the ad, you get to, well, in order to qualify for Verizon business internet at $50, you need to sign up 3 MVNO lines with the business for unlimited talk, text for $19.95 a month. Okay, stop. So please get me that customer, John. Get me 3 lines of unlimited talk and text, no data, unlimited talk and text for $19. I'll sell you, no problem. I'll sell you business internet, 5G, everything for $50. So the point is, the carriers, there's a lot of negative sentiment within the reseller market and the dealer market. How can we compete with T-Mobile $35 home internet? Go through the whole funnel, click through the entire thing to get to the $35 unlimited home internet. You have to have credit score of 710, 4 MVNO lines, family plans, this, that.
Yep.
And so the only way I can actually help the dealers compete, and I can, is by giving them access to everything. So that's why the platform we're building,
Hmm.
both on the tech side and on our contract side, is actually the only way that they're going to make it long term is by kind of agreeing to sell this. And there's an education process, right? We deal with a lot of guys that are used to selling either wireless handset plans, or maybe they're used to selling some light IoT or some light FWA. They have to evolve and they have to learn, and that's just the way that technology works, right? I mean, I didn't know. I came from finance. I didn't know what a radio tower was. I didn't know what a QCI was. I didn't know what a chip or module was, right? I learned. It took me 4 years, a lot of pain, but people need to learn. But if they learn, our platform enables them to do kind of everything if they want to, and we could teach them, like, right? Like, to me, dealers are not my competitors at all. And we have, several B2C brands, but to me, dealers are not my competitors because they're rural and they have they have footprints in their communities. They have usually retail footprints, which we don't, obviously. And so to me, the more dealers I can kind of educate and enable, the better, right? I want, you know, I deal with a lot of WISPs that have never sold MVNO, and they always dream of being an MVNO. Tax compliance is their number one barrier. Fine, I'll give it to you for free. Here's all the plans. Here's the platform. Here's the tax compliance for free. See what you do in the next like 30 days. Then we could talk about platform fees and et cetera. But if somebody has an existing business and an existing geo footprint, we don't even mind giving them everything, access to everything for free. And as long as we see effort, well, we can proceed. For smaller dealers that obviously, kind of want to start from the ground up, maybe we'll charge them a very small implementation fee, but nothing like the 10, 15 grand that kind of you see floating around. We'll get you up and running within the same week. We'll charge you a couple $1,000 and let's see if it works, it works, but we'll spend the time with you, right? My whole point is kind of we'll educate you and we'll spend the time with you.
They say that the only thing that's constant in the telecom and wireless business is change, and the landscape is going through another wave of change, in my opinion and others. Most notable is the carriers that have bought their own MVNOs and now are brands, and the list is very long. But how does anybody's dealers in the MVNO space keep them competitive?
You have to cross sell other products. That's really the only way. The other way is bundling in creative manners, right? I think Mint Mobile led the way in this, but there's others that do this relatively successfully. They pre-sell a 1 year plan at a very reduced cost, right? Or they pre-sell a 3 month plan. A lot of this is in the Amish and kosher communities. So we're relatively large in both communities, and so we pre-sell 1 year plans, right? You could prepay for a 1 year plan, and you could, if it's just unlimited talk, text, and very little data, you can make quite attractive offerings that are competitive relative to the carriers. The carriers are not really incentivized, back to kind of the examples I went through earlier. I think T-Mobile's, if you go into T-Mobile consumer, cheapest plan is, I believe, $16. If you go into AT&T consumer, cheapest plans, I think $23 that I've seen. So I think Verizon's is somewhere in the 20s, somewhere in the middle, if you're not going to the business side. And so they're not trying to chase the $5, $7, $10 ARPUs. So there is a lot of opportunity, I believe, in those kind of smaller segments. And really, the MVNOs were meant to take one, two, sometimes three users, right? So MVNO pricing is competitive. Like, if I walk into an AT&T store and I just want to get one line of service as a consumer, even if I have a 750 credit score, I'm a postpaid customer, pretty sure it's $65 and then
Yeah,
plus fees, right? So you're at
right, right.
75.
Yep.
And I think T-Mobile's probably the cheapest. Verizon's in the middle somewhere, right? But if you take a look at that and you say, okay, what if I get two lines? I think you're at 55, right? So MVNOs can, and the pricing that wholesalers give MVNOs allow them to be competitive at the one line or two line mark. When you start getting into 3 and 4, into the family plans, the carriers will price you out every time, right? So you could be very competitive in the 1, 2 line market. 3 line is a struggle, but perhaps a little bit depending on the usage. But once you get to 4 lines plus, I mean, you're not competitive.
What about that behavior, the consumer behavior today? Are people more price driven, service driven, or brand driven than they were 5 years ago?
I would say that it's a mix of price, right? You always have the consumers that are kind of price driven, but it still has to work. And I think there's been more and more of telecom not working recently, as a whole.
In what way?
So cell phones existed since the 2000s, right? Even when I was in elementary school, let's say. I don't remember the last time that my cell phone went out and didn't work from, I would say, 2010 to 2024. Do you remember a time when your cell phone didn't work from 2010 to 2024?
I do not.
From 2024 to 2026, so we had Cineverse, right, where all international went out. We had multiple, quite large outages across all the major MNOs, and it's a mix of two things. It's a mix of centralization of data centers and sort of infrastructure, and it's a mix of 5G capacity and sort of uh, pre-selling service, I would say, that certain areas are not ready for. That's why with FWA, it's not, they could open it to everybody for resale, but there's address verification. There's select partners who are trusted to kind of do all that due diligence, not to overload the network and not to crash the network fundamentally, right? And so there right now is the best opportunity for resellers to get into FWA because the carriers are not ready to release it to the mass market, right? So they release it to select partners. The select partners then do a lot of due diligence to make sure we can actually put this unlimited thing in this location, not to crash a tower, right? And so that trusted relationship is sort of what exists, and that's why it's not in the mass market yet. That opportunity will continue to exist for another, I would say, 2 years. After that 2 years, this will become more and more saturated, and so people will have to keep adapting, same way that they have to adapt in all industries, right?
Let's talk about the All Wireless and Prepaid Expo coming up next month in Las Vegas at Caesars. That'll be on August 18th and 19th. You'll be there. What are you looking to accomplish when you go out there?
I want to educate more telecom resellers that they should be more forward looking into diversifying kind of what they do. I think that if we give you the tools to start reselling everything, MVNO, FWA, IoT, get better access to hardware financing, I think dealers and resellers should take advantage of that. We have, bill on behalf of programs where we deal with all of the billing. We deal with all the tax compliance. You could still be your brand. We could still sign agreements that you own the customers and the economic rights to the customers, even though we bill. We have all sorts of flexible structures, but I think that it's important to educate resellers and dealers in the space that they have options and that we can get them started very quickly with a multi-product portfolio, because if they keep selling one thing, they'll just get priced out, right? It happened in MVNO and it'll keep happening in other segments of wireless.
I know you'll be exhibiting out there, but more importantly, you're going to be on a panel called the MVNOs Meet the Market, which I have the honor of moderating, along with Ed Evans, who's the CEO and chairman of Consumer Cellular, and Michael Lanzon, who's the chief revenue or chief service officer for Mobile X. And so it should be a good panel for us. What is the single most important message that you want the people that hear this panel or they'll see it later to walk away from?
I think that ultimately, in order to connect with your community and be successful with both their consumer brand and your consumer brand, you need to offer a mix of pricing, incentives, as well as quality customer service, as well as a breadth of connectivity offerings. And I think that the main takeaway for me is people should uh, every company, every MVNO company should strive to sell as much wireless service as possible to their users. And wireless service is only going to get more and more popular, from AI wearables to pet trackers is something we started doing recently. I think that in order for long-term success and connection with your customer, you should continue kind of expanding your product portfolio.
Good. Well, I look forward to it. We have 3 good personalities on there, and I have to be at the top of my game to keep you guys in line once we start digging into some of the issues there. So I look forward to seeing you out there as always, and having you on the panel and talking about the business as we always do. How does one contact Wing Tel Alpha if they saw this or listened to it and they want to learn more about how you can help them grow their business?
B2B sales at wingalpha.com. You could also email me, leo@wingalpha.com, and we'll point them in the right direction within the company. We still have 117 full-time professionals, so happy to help and support.
So, Leo, before we say goodbye, anything else?
John, where do I get a bobblehead like that? You're going to bring that in Vegas to me?
I might. I broke one of the arms off of it when I took it somewhere once. But yeah, maybe I'll bring it to because I do have a booth, 831. The Boon of Wireless will be interviewing people like we do at all the shows that we attend. So yeah, maybe I'll bring the bobblehead and give it to a lucky visitor. I don't know. All right. Well, listen, Leo Levit, thank you very much. For a young man, you have accomplished quite a bit. And I know there's more great things to come for your company, most importantly for you. And I value our friendship. So thank you.
Thank you, John.
That is going to wrap up another episode of the Boon of Wireless. And as always, we'll see you next time. Do you want to be a guest on the Boon of Wireless podcast? Give us a call at 908-THE-BOON. Yes, 908-843-2666.